Guyana, and welcome to this week's edition of Facing the Nation. Of course, I am Malika Ramsey. Thank you for joining us. It really is a pleasure to be back with you this week. Well, the buzz in Georgetown, the buzz in Guyana right now, is about the telecommunications sector, and everybody's excited, and people are still asking questions. Well, okay, this bill has been passed in the National Assembly. What does it mean for me? So, in saying all of that, I'd just like to remind you, some of you who've probably been consumed by your own stuff. The Telecommunications Bill was passed in the National Assembly earlier this week. That would have been on Monday. Of course, the person who is the center of attention now regarding that bill is the Minister of Public Telecommunications, the Honorable Cathy Hughes, we all know her as. It's wonderful to have her back on this program. The last time Mrs. Hughes and I spoke, she was still the Minister of Tourism, responsible for tourism, and that would have been in December. So a lot has changed. We're going to talk to her about that change and how she's been able to transition from tourism to telecommunication, because I know that's big. We all want to hear about that. But before I chat with the minister, I'd like to also let you know that coming up in the second half of today's program, as you know, currently I don't like to use the term summer because it's not a season for us here in Guyana. They're on vacation. The students are on vacation, and some of them have been involved in a robotics camp. So I have 2 or 3 facilitators of that robotics camp. They're expected to be on the program in the second half. But for now, it's all about Cathy Hughes and telecommunications. Minister Hughes, welcome back to Facing the Nation. It is fabulous to have you back.
It's great to be here. Thank you, Malika.
All right, great. Even before we talk about telecommunications, public telecommunications, all the buzz and so on, you have been for years, this is even before, viewers, I should remind you, this is even before we heard about her in politics or on any political platform. When we heard about Cathy Hughes, we thought about things like that. We thought about tourism,
Sidewalk Cafe,
Arianse
Hotel.
She's reminding me. But so, for some people, months ago, when her portfolio changed from Minister of Tourism to Minister of Public Telecommunications, it was a bit confusing. Some people are still not necessarily in agreement with that move. But let's hear from the minister herself. How have you settled in? Was it a big transition?
It was a big transition, but what is good about it is that it was a gradual transition.
Okay.
And therefore, I said to our Honorable President the other day, I trust your judgment.
Okay.
And I really, really do trust his judgment, because in January of this year, he created a Ministry of Public Telecommunications. And it was based on the fact that, look, this is an area in Guyana that we haven't paid enough attention to. And so when he was reviewing at the end of last year how the government was operating, he realized that we need to do more in this area. And so he came to me and he said, Cathy, this is an area that I think you have some skills in, and I would like you to focus more on this. Of course, being, the usual woman and being very close to the tourism sector for so long,
yes,
I had mixed feelings. I was very excited about being asked to do public telecommunications, but I kind of felt this tourism thing is my baby. But in retrospect, I am excited at public telecommunications, because I think in this discussion I'll be able to show you that so many facets of our life and what we want to do as we embark on a better standard of living. When we talk about development, all these things can't happen unless you have good telecommunication services. And here we're talking about the possibilities of being able to connect to the internet fast.
Yeah, that's always a complaint here.
Exactly. We have challenges with that. And why is that so important? Imagine for people that want to get into their own business. I like to use the example of the lady I bought a hammock from in Surama, who is dependent on visitors coming to Surama to see her beautiful hammock. I purchased one, but imagine if she had regular internet access.
How many persons?
She could have a Facebook page,
and I'm sure
she could
you
be
had
selling.
To go to Surama.
Exactly.
To see it.
If I hadn't gone to Surama and happened to be walking past her that day and met her and saw this beautiful hammock, the odds of her being able to sell me that hammock were limited. So people like her need to be able to have a Facebook page, need to be able to sell her indigenous Amerindian hammocks, not only to people in Georgetown and to Guyana, but maybe to the rest of the world. And so for e-commerce, when you talk about medicine, we have hinterland communities where you don't have a doctor around the corner. And therefore, if through having internet access in their homes or even in a community post office, the people in the hinterland that have a situation, a medical situation, an illness, for them to be able to make a call to a doctor or to go online and speak with a doctor who says, what are your symptoms? This is what you can do in the interim whilst you get to good medical attention.
But Minister, in a sense,
When-
what you're also doing though, you're still promoting to you're still
Absolute-
contributing to the tourism sector, because for example the example that you gave with the woman in Surama with the hammock and so on, people out of the country may not only see that but other
Exactly.
things. So you're still contributing.
So that's why I said, Malika, there's so many e-commerce. We talk about medical support services. You know, we can talk about entrepreneurial activities that somebody might be doing, the startups of a business. Even in the tourism sector, you know that when we go and people are traveling to locations, they want to be able to still check their emails. We're an interconnected world.
Yes.
We're an interconnected region. And so all these possibilities, all these things are possible. Training and education. Schools in the Rupanunis where they don't have, and here I'm not talking about just the Rupanuni. You know, there's so many other regions where they don't have enough teachers. And if by Skype, if by the new technologies, we're able to have that teacher at a school in Georgetown that's teaching, let's say, math or is teaching biology, if they could connect to that school in so many hinterland areas, the possibilities are endless.
Okay.
And therefore, I got to get the internet access, the telecommunications services working better to make sure that we deliver on our promise of development.
And that is indeed a challenge. And as you talk about delivering on promise, and this is even before the bill, since you've gone into office, have you been bombarded so far in terms of us not only having internet connection, but telephone services in various parts of the country? Have you been bombarded?
Yes, I have, and you know, quite rightly so, because I'm a user, I'm a customer, and I know that the telephone service that I get needs to be improved. And I want to say right here that I have very close discussions on a regular basis with both GT&T and Digicel.
Okay.
And even with the with us allocating additional spectrum that allowed them to raise their platform, I want to say that I went to Digicel and GT&T with a tall order. I literally gave them 2 weeks notice before, at the start of May, and said, you know, try and improve your service. We're going to give you some spectrum to do that. Because we knew that there would be an increase in people coming to Ghana during the month of May. And I'm excited to say that the statistics show we had just under 27,000 people
And this is for
that
the month of
came
May.
from the start of May to the end of May. So that's an incredible amount of
Yeah.
people. And we're excited because I know that our tourism is going to grow. But similarly, we are ensuring that both telephone companies, we want them to invest more in this sector. We want them to raise the game. We want to make sure that we don't have problems with connectivity, calls drop in, you know, that kind of thing.
Well,
So
I
we're
think
working
now-
on those issues.
I think now they won't have a choice, really.
Right, that's right.
Viewers, if you're now tuning in, this is Facing the Nation. Today, my discussion, the first half of our program, is focusing on public telecommunications, and of course, no other person fit the description than the Honorable Cathy Hughes. She is the Minister of Public Telecommunications. Let's talk about the bill now.
Yes.
All right. People are excited and they understand it's the passing of this bill. But let's get down to the meat of it. What does the passing of the bill really mean for us, really mean for Guyana, and how soon can we expect the wider parts of our country benefiting? Because again, unfortunately, most times things seem to be central right
in
here
Georgetown and the
Region
coast.
4. Yeah.
Essequibo, Berbice. Okay, so why this bill is important is that remember, we had GT&T that really had a monopoly. It meant that for international calls, for many parts of the service they provide, except for the mobile service, GT&T was the only company that had a license to operate. Digicel, of course, came on the scene, and they had a license for the mobile phone service. But if you wanted to make an overseas call, the only place you could go to is GT&T. And really, the way I like to explain it is that technology changed. Technology changed rapidly. And therefore, there's so many new things. Years ago, we didn't have data. So that when GT&T signed on to their contract, there was no service for data. And so one of the things that we believe is that when there's competition in a market, in an area, you get better service. And I'm happy that GT&T at all levels, at their parent company level and at the current management level, have said to us, and they've said to Guyana again just in the last couple of days, we want competition too. So it's a good thing, because once you have more than one players, it means that you, the customer, is going to get a better deal. I feel you will also get a better deal not only in service, but also in price. Because it means that you can now decide, well, am I using Digicel or am I using GT&T? And in some smaller communities, we might be able, with this legislation, to be able to get other smaller players that could provide services. So we have many hinterland and interior locations that don't have telephone service. Or if they have telephone service, you could only use your GT&T phone, and in some places you could only use a Digicel phone. So imagine that what we want to do is we want to attract smaller operators.
Not necessarily the giants.
Not necessarily the giants.
Okay.
That can go into Mabaruma, could go into Anai, could go into some of the villages, and they could develop a model whereby they could provide phone services and data for services, and maybe internet also in those communities.
As far as you know, in terms of your traveling and your work and your research and so on, of course, in public telecommunications, do we have those sort of people here, that sort of personnel here present already, who can possibly start to develop their small operations?
Well,
are they present?
that is a very good question. I think that we have the technical people, especially young people, that are doing all kinds of things. But because we didn't have the legislation, they never really thought of being able to develop a business that is focused in those little areas. So this is a tremendous opportunity. I'm speaking to all the young IT entrepreneurs, people that want to get into the service. The government can ensure that we provide the cell towers, we provide some of the infrastructure, and we want to hear from you, because those are the services that they could provide in specific communities. It's a good point for me to mention that an important part of this legislation is allowing other people to come in to the game.
Exactly. And
to get licenses. And also, the legislation has what we call a universal access fund. That means that if it's in a remote community, we are going to be able to start collecting monies from some of the bigger companies on a regular basis, and to build a fund. And that fund will be able to fund some of the expansion we want to have in some of these areas. Meaning that, imagine if a community only has 200 people. It's a challenge for an investor to come and spend a whole pile of money knowing that he would only have 200 people using the service.
the service, yes.
And that's why the government's commitment to develop the sector, to bring in infrastructure, and also this Universal Access Fund makes it possible for us to work with those folks that want to come on board and to help them in terms of devising a financial structure that still brings the technology to those communities. Because what has happened up to now, it don't make sense to go into this area or that area because it's a small population. So what we're
Right, and
saying
you're
now
going to be
is that
wasting your own resources too.
exactly, but now we're saying no matter how small the population is, we have to be able to bring internet and broadband access to those communities for all the reasons I mentioned: training, education, e-commerce, medical, whatever. And so this is a facility that we will be able to be creative, to come up with ideas and to
To
expand.
expand. All right. You mentioned a lot. You mentioned a lot of things, including investors. Now, if I can quote him directly, and you did talk about GT&T and your
Yes.
relationship with both companies earlier. Now, GT&T, the CEO, Mr. Ned, seems to believe that there will not be an immediate influx of competitors. Yes, those were his words.
Yep.
But what are your thoughts, and how realistic is in your head is a time frame whereby we can see, if not an influx, at least some amount of investors coming in to help us to build and improve the sector?
Good. Happy to answer that. Malika, we have to be realistic.
Okay.
We're talking about an industry that requires, for example, setting up those huge cell towers in the areas, that requires buying access, either broadband access, either from a fiber optic cable,
Yes.
either from satellites. So it's an expensive proposition to do it. And therefore, what I like to say is that now we have the legislation, we're going to be able to create a telecoms authority. We're actually right now going through at the ministry the structure of the Ministry of Telecommunications, which will now have to bring people on board that will start looking at the telecom side in greater detail. We'd have to have technical people. So realistically, I am saying that it's going to be a good 3 or 4 months before we have that model authority established and some people hired. Then we can start mapping out. There is also the whole aspect of negotiations that we have to do with GT&T. And I think that is also something that we're hoping to make rapid progress with and conclude before the end of the year. It is not until I would say next year, that we're going to be able to work out how it is that we are going to be able to go more into communities and expand.
Okay.
And this is where we also will have to send messages out. I'm going to probably have to go and speak to investors, both locally, internationally, to say, guess what, guys? You can come in. There's an opportunity for you in our telecom sector.
I'm happy you mentioned that, because my next thing would have been really and truly, how you plan to handle investors proposing in that time that you're working out the structure and so on?
Well, we got a jump start in that in just about a month ago. You might have heard of the investment conference
Yes.
that took place in New York. And I had an opportunity to speak at that conference, and there I spoke for investments in the tourism sector, and I was also able to speak about investments in the telecommunications sector. So already I have some, people that have sent me proposals, people I met that gave me business cards. So it's just a matter of acting on those. And also being able to spread the word after we design the model that, guess what, folks, we want you to go into these unserved areas. Unlike other countries where there are 4 or 5 providers, meaning in the US, you could go to Verizon, you could go to AT&T, you could go to whoever it is you want.
Right, there are those that we don't know
Fios,
about.
whoever. We don't have that. And therefore, we now have to encourage those people to come on board and invest.
Okay.
And therefore, part of what I'm going to be doing is going out to people and spreading the word.
All right.
We're going to have to develop a website for the Ministry of Public Telecommunications. We're going to have information on there. I'm going to have to use social media to say to people, go visit the website, see what the opportunities are. So it's going to take time. But I feel strongly that a year from today,
Will be.
I want you to invite me back.
Yes,
And
I
we would
will.
be able to say, guess what? We laid the foundation and now we're cooking with gas.
And this is
And
it.
we're moving forward.
And we're ready. I mean,
Yes.
Minister's really good because you seem to have hands-on in what you want, where you want the ministry to go, and where you want the telecommunication sector to go. As the minister, the subject minister, you did speak about the operations of both GT&T and Digicel. Those are our giants.
Yes.
But as minister, while you're fixing structure and preparing to have this massive launch for Guyana in terms of improving the sector, what specifically are you in this period are you expecting from both these giants, GT&T and Digicel?
Well, I am expecting them to both up their game,
Okay.
to improve on their services. And if I look at how they both, with the additional spectrum they got, and I want to say that that is something that, I looked at and said, we need to do this for the people of Guyana.
Okay.
That was an opportunity that existed a long time. I mean, it wasn't tied to the Telecommunications Bill. So this is where, in a kind of a way, we have to take responsibility that we haven't given the telecoms companies some of what they've needed to be able to improve and to expand.
Okay.
And therefore, if you look at how aggressively they jumped on to 4G and 3G, and in some areas they're still working out the platform,
Yeah.
but at least they committed to spending money to start doing that. And I think Guyana benefits because of the competition. It's healthy competition. They both have to be working to make it better. And the customer is going to have a choice. So in terms of how we benefit, our service with time, once the companies invest more, they put new technologies, and as part of the competition, all the new platforms, all the new services in, the apps, the applications that are available, the services that are available, we're going to see them hustling to bring those to Guyana in a better way.
Okay.
So I think that we will definitely benefit, and there's nothing like competition.
Like competition.
Yeah.
Just for clarity, again, even though we have both giants, only one gives us landline. This bill also opens that up.
It does. It does. It does open the opportunity for people to now say that they want to do landline services in any area. The challenge, I'll be honest, with landline services is that it's a very expensive thing to do.
More than the cell phone?
Yes. And if you look at how the world is moving, let's be honest. We know we need landline services in some areas,
Yeah.
and at some entities like
The business.
the post offices, businesses, you always have to have that. But my sister who lives in Washington D.C., they don't even answer their cell phone, their house
landline.
phone anymore. In fact, she tells me, Cathy, don't answer the phone because a lot of the time it's marketers calling to sell them something. They're into their cell phones, they're texting, their WhatsApp, everything on there.
Yes.
So
we're moving away
that's
from
the
the
reality.
landline.
That's the reality.
Indeed. I have to begin to wrap up my conversation with the minister soon. Of course, it's always such a joy and a pleasure whenever she's here that I don't want to let her go, but unfortunately, I can't do that. Consultations. You did talk about going into the various communities and so on and having these possible small providers, potential providers, do their research and try to set up and serve those faraway communities, so to speak. Do you have a format or have you yet committed to having wide consultations, countrywide, of course, and how involved? Again, I always like to bring in the private sector.
Yep. Funny you ask about that because just last night I had a meeting with some members of the private sector. They had invited me to a dinner and we had very good conversations. It was a good opportunity for them to ask questions and to understand where we're
Yes.
going with the process. And, we are very committed to doing that. At that same meeting last night, for example, we had they'd invited the Minister of Finance, they'd invited the Minister of Public Security.
Okay.
And both those gentlemen are very good in, we want people to be involved in the process. What we're trying to say, Malika, is that there's so much to be done. And here is where I say to people, you know me, take my word. The things that we thought that the infrastructure and the support services and the systems in ministries that we thought we were going to be there were not there to the level we
So
expected.
you basically
So we started from scratch, and therefore I could see people looking and saying, "Oh gosh, it's a whole year. What you all doing? This is not change; it's an
I'm
exchange."
happy you said that. I'm happy that the minister brought that
So
up.
I'm saying, in my own field, in addition to it being a new thing for me, so I got to get on board. I got to put my ideas in place. I tell people to do the one thing that I need to do. There were 10 things I had to do before I could do that one thing. So I'm saying to the viewer out there, trust me, we got your back. We got your interest. And just bear with us as we unfold these things. I was so happy. I got a call the other day from a lady, and she said to me, "Minister, my house didn't flood. Before, when the rain fall for 2 days," she lives in All Boys Town. She said, if the rain fell for 15 minutes, her whole yard would be flooded. And I don't have to tell you what would be in her yard.
Yes.
Because she is in front of Pontstrent Dam, And so she's so excited that her place didn't flood.
Okay.
So there are those small things happening, but sometimes in the haste. And I understand because
it's been
we
2
WhatsApp
decades,
it.
and it's been 2 decades of stress.
Exactly.
So people expected. I mean, even I tell people, fine, I'm a junior government official, and sometimes, even though I would not do it publicly and I would not bash
You
the
wonder why it
government
happening.
sometimes in my own side, I'm like, okay, we need to get this going. We're moving too
Yes,
slow. But I
yes.
guess it's just human nature.
Exactly. And things and bad habits that developed over the last 30 or 40 years or the last 20 years, we are now trying to change. And I think it happened in a year.
Exactly.
But I tell you, you can start to see and feel it in a couple more months' time. So it is exciting times. And I think, there's a lot more to be done. I would like Guyanese to, in terms of the telecommunications, we have regulations
Okay.
that are going to be developed. And these regulations have to do with frequency licenses, spectrum management, all the different things that are part of this industry. And just as how there was extensive consultation on that legislation, it was in a select committee for months and months.
Yeah.
And in Parliament, I went to Parliament with a stack of papers this high that were just the results and the minutes from those meetings. And that's why I felt, look, we consulted with everybody. We ain't got to waste time consulting again. The rest of the world is moving ahead.
While we're consulting.
Whilst we're still consulting. So we had consultations in that area. But I will go out and do a set of consultations when we develop those regulations so that people can put their input as to what they think.
And then, even if you're not putting your input, you understand what is going on. You're Guyanese. You need to know every little thing.
And I want to say that my door is always open. My office is in Colgrain House, which is in front of Colgrain Pool, right in Camp Street, next door to Christ Church. So I have an open door policy. You can come if I'm not there at the time. You speak to Michelle, she can set up an appointment, a time. I'm actually hoping that by the end of August, I will be able to advertise a specific day and time when the public could come and meet and chat with me, But I'm sorry I haven't been able to do it yet. As you could imagine, there's a lot of transition, there's a lot of traveling in Guyana and out of Guyana. And but I am excited.
I know, I can feel your excitement, and Minister, I want to congratulate you. Doing a fabulous job, and this is not just me saying it because she's one of my favorite ministers, but you are doing a fantastic job. Congratulations, and of course, the public will continue to, in a sense, put pressure on you, because if things are taking too long to move
Yes.
along, they will say it. And you know,
Yes.
Guyanese, we say what it is that we mean, and we know that you will get this feedback. So once again, congratulations. And of course, thank you very much for coming on Facing the Nation
My
today.
pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be here with you.
Okay.
And you keep up the good work because you're doing a great job too.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Take care.
Okay, of course, viewers, this is Facing the Nation. On the other side of this break, we will be talking to those young ones regarding robotics, the robotics camp that's happening now, and they'll give you all the information and tell you why it's important. And in a sense, it will be linked to what Minister Hughes talked about earlier in terms of getting people on board and so on. Stay with Facing the Nation.